Hello, it's 2nd of March 24. It's Saturday, and talking about the fall of the West, the only thing that matters, um, the only crisis really. So today I'll be talking about Rishi's speech yesterday from Downing Street, where he came out and gave a very impassioned speech. It's the most impassioned I've ever seen him, actually. And in other stories, I think there was about 1.4 million visas given out last year in the UK. So that's for 1.4 million new people, um, probably with a view of becoming British and not returning except for holidays. And another story, George Galloway won Rochdale. I thought the other guy might win it, the Labour guy, but no, George won it. And I'll be talking about London Theatre. There's a play coming on, I don't know, about people who are into matters' lives will be very excited about it. And the American man who wrote it or whatever, he's going to make it. There's going to be separation nights exclusively for, well, it's attended audience, I suppose, really. Yeah, and it's just interesting that that concept's been introduced. We're getting that. They call them safe spaces usually. It's an interesting concept, and it might be the way forward, for all of us. I think long term, possibly British natives will move away to another new country that's created, or I don't know, some other way of solving it. At the moment, we're heading for anarchy, and that's what Labour and Conservatives both agree they want. Yeah. But the first story I'm going to go on about is Suella Braverman. She appeared on Trigonometry this week. That's a sort of podcast with those two guys. One guy's sort of Russian-Ukrainian origin, I think. And the other guy is sort of Irish, British, or whatever. Both of them like Britain, so they speak highly of it, from what I saw anyway. But it's interesting. I think they've both voted against Brexit in 2016, but now they're known for sort of, I would say, sort of Reform Party, sort of, I don't know, they would probably disagree, but what I mean is they're into that sort of economics, as well as maybe being a bit sceptical about the way the people of Britain are changing. I don't know, maybe not too much. But anyway, yeah. So Suella Braverman appeared on their show this week, and it was a great interview. It was about an hour and 5 minutes long, and it was really interesting because really they just let her talk. So that's what I call good interviews, because I'm not interested in the interviewer's point of view, really, or supposed knowledge. I mean, Piers Morgan's went to YouTube now. I don't know whether it's because his talk TV show is just not getting the ratings, or have he's seen that Tucker Carlson's making a fortune on Twitter, and he's doing the same on YouTube, because I see his things on YouTube are getting like 500,000 views and that. I don't know, but I watched one with him with Norman Finkelstein and that other guy who he represents a point of view. But I only watched a few minutes of it. It was a waste of time. And then the other one was that John Waltheimer or something. It was interesting to listen to, especially what he said about 15 years ago. We're saying the obvious, really. But Piers kept interrupting them, so it was annoying. And Piers was meant to be demonstrating his knowledge, but he was just showing his ignorance, in my opinion. So, yeah, that was the thing. When I saw that, I had about 350,000 views. So I'm wondering whether Piers has actually just seen that Tucker Carlson's making a fortune on Twitter. He doesn't need Talk TV or whatever now, you know. I mean, I'm all for that because I prefer YouTube to legacy media or even sort of platform company media, even GB News, which I really like, especially since I've got Martin Dobney, Patrick Christie's, and uh, the two young posh people, Emily Carver and Tom Harwood. That's my three favourites there. I'm glad Nigel's there. I'm glad Jacob's there and Lee. And I'm glad about the slant that I've got. I think it's good. I think that's why Rishi made his speech, actually. But anyway, I prefer individuals like Maya Tusay or Amy Culture Forum, which I would call individuals, even though they're just a sort of grassroots thing. I prefer things like that. Even Owen Jones, I watch that quite a lot, even though I don't agree a lot. I agree with what he's upset about at the moment, mostly, but yeah, it was just interesting to see Suella on trigonometry, because I would have thought that would be out of bounds for Tory party people, although I think David Davis has been on it. But because I think you're sort of getting into that sort of Reform Party territory, maybe even sort of conspiracy stuff about other things, not the main subject that we're thinking of here. So it was interesting to see that, because she was talking about immigration that all the time, and although she did say that we're not multiculturalism is a failure, but we want to be a successful multi-ethnic country. Well, I don't know about that really. I don't know if that's possible, to be honest. Humans have been evolving for 2 million years. You know, this is a 75-year experiment we're on in Britain at the moment. In Australia, it started in 1973, really, and Canada in 1971. America, they had their issues from the start, but even in the 1960s, 1960, they were 90% of a certain thing that maybe people coming from other continents apart from Europe dream about. America, 90% of that community. I don't know, percent or something. Yeah, so that's 1965. That sort of changed under Johnson, because to get to America between 1925 and 95 was very hard for anybody, because they sort of closed their doors really, and that was probably their most successful years. So anyway, I agree with most of what she said. I think she should be the next Conservative leader, or maybe even PM. I think Rishi's a busted flush, really. But also, even Matt Tussey is another great podcaster on YouTube, and he was saying that he's arranging an interview with Suella. So that's how really getting into sort of new territory, really, on the right there, because he's done interviews with Tommy Robinson and been seen in marches with him and that, which I'm not against. But I would have thought for Rishi that would be too much. But Suella's going to talk to him. He's excellent, by the way. My to say he's excellent. I totally support him. He speaks for me, really. So that's interesting, seeing Suella going there, that sort of area. And I'm all for it, yeah. It's good, because legacy media is totally useless now. I don't even watch it. Legacy news media, or I don't even watch Prime Minister's Question Time now, or Question Time on the BBC or anything. It's just pointless. Or even shows where politicians are on it, except GB News, really. Even that I watch on YouTube. So on to my next thing, man, I'll talk about Rishi's speech, and it was just a strange one. For a start, it was really impactful with it. It didn't make sense, and we've sort of all forgot about it today. You know, what was that about? You know, it was the the day after George Galloway got elected, and he seemed to think this was a sort of outrage or something. I don't know why. I mean, Britain's changed, and through the Labour and Tories, and new people have new voting patterns, you know. So I don't know how they're surprised. He was saying we were the most successful multicultural nation, and well, if that's the case, I wouldn't want to see the other ones, you know, because one anxiety is looking like it might be a disaster for everyone. You know, it's 75 years out of 2 million years of human evolution, for Britain anyway. But the weird thing is that he kept bringing in sort of the right far, you know, as if he's speaking right across the spectrum, when we all feel he's sort of talking about the newcomers who support George Galloway and that, you know, and he was going on about those marches and thingy. Personally, I don't really see what's wrong with the marches apart from if they set off flares and it could get really worse. I think they're on their best behaviour, but they don't really look as if I mean, I don't agree. I agree with why they're actually marching, except they don't agree with why they're marching because I don't feel that the Palestinians is what they're marching about really. I think they're really more about ego and maybe a complex about it. For instance, if they had a choice between Palestine getting 22% of Palestine back, let's see, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, or Palestinians fighting to the death. I'm not sure about these people of Britain who support George Galloway would want for the Palestinians. Would they want them to fight to the death? You know, it's something you've got to think yourself. I don't really think it's about Palestinians that they're marching for. It's just maybe even you could see it as an anti of the society they dreamt of moving to, of the people who created those societies, that sort of thing, you know. Because a lot of countries in the world, in my opinion, people seem to want away from them and they want to come to Western countries, and you could argue that they're being racist when they pick those countries, but I feel that a lot of countries in the world, the male ego is out of control, and this is why they want away from their own homelands. They feel that the people who've created Britain are very good of good temperance and Q, and because any society could be like the UK, US, Australia, any society at all. I mean, look at Australia. It's only been going about 200 years or something. New Zealand, probably even less. Canada. Any society can be as desirable to people of Africa, Asia who want to move to those countries. Any country in Africa or Asia could be as desirable, but for some reason they're not. And not only that, they would be homogenous to the people, which seems quite important to these people as well, especially when you look at marriage patterns and things. Yeah, so Rishi's speech was just sort of jumbled about, and I know it's the first thing he got through was that there should be no hatred towards one group who always get put in first instead of to be based in their context. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I don't know why we can't just individualise things. If we're talking about one thing or the other, there always seems to be sort of broad spectrum, so it doesn't really make sense. You know, what are you really talking about? You know, because I think 2 days ago, 110 people died at a food aid truck in Gaza or whatever. I mean, from stories I'm hearing, it sounds as if this might happen more than once. Because somebody was on the Grey Zone, they were telling a story about some journalist that they knew from there. He went to a food aid truck, his wife asked him not to go or whatever. And it wasn't this case. It was a while back. When he got back, his house had been bombed. He lost his wife and a daughter, I think. But I think he lost his life as well later. I can't remember how. So I don't know, but it sounds as if it's happened more than once, that, and this seems to be what Biden and the UK leaders support. I see that the US today are dropping food aid packages into Gaza over the air and doing their package. So basically, what they're saying is they don't trust who's supposed to be doing it by land, basically, and also those land things get stopped by protesters. Protesters of the side that we're supposed to be supporting, that David Cameron says we have to support and stuff, So yeah, so this is all just a really strange thing. But it's ironic that this thing is the thing that's sort of showing us how Britain's going to go in the future. Because if there's any consolation to Palestinians, many who moved to Britain now, including that lady who had the paraglider thing on her thingy, she said she was too critical of Hamas or something, her family, so she had to move here. And she was in the thingy with a paraglider on her t-shirt or something. Just shows how crazy our Britain's going to become. But if there's any consolation to Palestinians, the British natives are going to lose our country. We already have, really, but we're going to lose our country too. So, same way that Palestine was lost, Britain created the borders of Palestine and that. So, anyway, Rishi's speech was all over the place. I don't think it'll please anyone. He tried to lump everyone in of course, the right far were getting thinged. Even though it's according to Interpol or something, that's like 90% of the cases they're following are not to do with the right far, it's to do with sort of newcomers, people of other heritage that have like South Asia and stuff, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so Rishi, it was really a busted flush thing. I felt it was a sort of plea to not go the Lee Anderson route and not, because I think Britain's at an existential thing now. In fact, we've passed it and lost. I know that the Nick that he mentioned in his speech said our last chance of saving Britain was about 15 years ago. There's no chance of that now politically. It's too far gone now, and I think he's right. So Rishi's thing was all over the place. I think he'll probably lose more MPs, Tory MPs, basically. More will be looking to try and shift them. I think he should get shifted, really. He's just looking this. I don't know how they could put it in their place. Maybe Suella Braverman or Robert Jenrick. Someone on this issue, basically. So that was all over the place. Didn't make much sense, but he was very impassionate. And then into another thing, Nigel Farage was on about this on Thursday or Wednesday, whatever. I think I knew this already, but 1.4 million visas were given out last year. So that's 1.4 million newcomers, new voters, once they get their inevitable citizenship. So Nigel was saying it was an outrage and all that. That is. And that's the year before, it was like 1.2 million or something. And I don't think that's even including asylum cases, which are, I don't know, like 40,000, 50,000 a year. So this is how we're really changing, And so I was saying that, she was saying that the student thing is just totally out of control. A lot of them are coming to immigrate rather than to actually be students, and they're coming for Mickey Mouse courses, probably literally. They maybe not even turning up after a month or so. But the unions don't care because they're getting paid, because they're paying they're well-off people from other countries. Yeah, it's just, she said that in the care sector. It's just totally out of control. People are coming for jobs that don't even exist because they've got agencies that help them and all this sort of thing. And I remember some story where my mate feel sorry for some pregnant lady who came from Africa, but when she got here, she found she didn't have a job or whatever, or because she was pregnant. She would, whatever happened, she'd probably get citizenship anyway, so she's not bothered. I think she did actually. I think that's why she felt okay to tell it. So it's a total disaster. We need to vote either Social Democrat Party, UKIP, or First Britain. If you want to vote about this, we've not really got a real party to vote on it, and mainstream reform aren't really the answer. They're better than nothing. But if you're in it, if you vote SNP Labour, you're wanting the change to happen sooner rather than later. You're wanting Rabbieburn statues ripped down and that sort of thing. So Agnes and Jerry in your flat in East House, you need to vote reform at least, but or Social Democrat Party or UKIP or First Britain, but they don't stand in most seats. So vote at reform at least, I'd say, as a protest vote, because SNP and Labour are taking us to anarchy as fast as possible. Because I think that's what's going to happen. We're heading for anarchy, and it's a case of how fast. Tories, it's a bit slower. Labour and SNP are in full speed. So another thing, George Kennedy went the Rochdale election. I was surprised. About 39% of the vote turned out. I was surprised that he got such a big vote. He got about 13,000 or something. And the guy I thought would win, the Labour guy that got dumped and then revoked his apology, because I thought his voters would see him as a real deal, you know. Like, he got about 2,500 votes or something, so he was quite a bit behind. At one point in the Betfair Exchange, a few hours before the polls closed, he was the favourite. It switched from George to him, but then it was switched back to George, and they were right by a long way. George was first, an independent guy was second, but he was just an independent guy, as if Britain hasn't changed in the last 75 years, and as if it's 1947. So maybe the Labour voters voted for him, you know, the traditional Labour voters. So George won. I don't know, it's just sad. It's sad that the people who voted for him aren't voting for someone that they can identify with, you know, that they feel is a real deal. George is getting used as a useful idiot. I think he said to not the Andrew Marr show on YouTube that at the end of his time was at East Ham or something he represented as an MP. I think that was a very high Bangladeshi British, or it was definitely South Asia British of a religion. But George said at the end, things get tough because his activists were wanting roles, or they were wanting staff removed so he could be staff, something like that. So he can see how that's going. And I hope it goes that way again for him, you know, but because I think he's playing with fire, really. He's playing with his only real audience. I mean, he will have some Corbynista types, but not many, I think. He says that Reform asked him, Richard Tice asked him to stand as a candidate for Reform, but I find that hard to believe, but you can't tell Richard now. I mean, Richard's choice for the Rochdale thing was a disaster, that Simon, the ex-MP there, you know, because he was in the news all the time, really, with things that if you had a daughter aged about 20, you wouldn't be very happy about that sort of thing. You know, so I don't know. I think that was a mistake for sure, anyway. So he's one. He's just a sort of useful idiot, really. Just busted flushes, and he's no use to anyone, really, apart from. I just thought that the voters who voted him in would have had some dignity and voted someone they could really identify with, you know, but because he revoked his apology of his conspiracy theory that even Shamina Begum's lawyer didn't agree with, and he's standing as a candidate in London as an independent. It wouldn't have surprised me if he ends up standing for Aspire, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wins, especially if it's a Labour MP. And it seems all the Labour MPs turns out they're all scared at the moment. And again, they use a broad brush, saying there's the right far and then there's the other side. We don't really know what they're talking about. But I think they're talking about, people who like Brits who like South Asia and that, who feel strongly about Israel. I think that sort of thing, the kind that they've defended and enabled up till now, and also created a Britain that's where they can flourish, and many of them can come over to become British. And it seems now that they're afraid of them and they want to work from home. Harriet Harman was saying, I find Harriet Harman a bit of a joke. She's represented her London constituency for 41 years, and I'm guessing now she would be, if she was to get the candidates, well, she wouldn't get the candidacy there for Labour, even though she's a woman, because she doesn't represent, she probably represent a tiny portion of that constituency now. If you lots of London Labour MPs like that, Jeremy Corbyn, they all don't reflect their constituencies, basically. And just this thing about this London theatre, says, what was his name, Jeremy O'Harris. He's proud of his name, he's not like Muhammad Ali, he doesn't want to change it or whatever. Some American to come over, and I think it's some sort of slave play in the London theatre, and they're having, when the show runs at the start, they're having special nights for those who will identify with the subject. I can't say it all. It's just interesting that this separation idea has been brought in, separation, safe places brought in, boycotts as well. I'm all for these sort of things. I think it's a sort of an idea that is a good idea, really, because the way we're being multi, I don't think it's going to work at all. It's going to be total anarchy for everyone. It's not going to be good for anyone. We're looking at the last few hours of the Titanic before it hits the iceberg. Everybody's bailing on, for a society that functioned. It's the same for all the West, really. So that's my thoughts for just now. I'm looking forward to Suella being on the 2mar24 show. And yeah, goodbye.